All right, everyone. Thanks for your patience. We're still seeing some attendees join, but I want to be conscious of everyone's time. So we'll go ahead and kick off. I'd like to welcome you all to the first Teambridge feature spotlight. Really excited to start this new series where we'll regularly showcase new features, highlight how they can be used, answer any questions you have. So please be on the lookout for our next spotlight coming in December, and then we'll do these on a regular cadence going forward as we have new features and get requests from you all on things you want to hear more about. For the agenda today, we'll plan to use the first half of this meeting to demo new features and the second half for questions. You should have access to Q&A. So if at any time you have a question, please just drop it in the chat where my colleagues will reply in real time. For any questions that we don't get to or need a little bit of additional clarification, we'll cover those at the end. So let's dive in. Today, we're going to talk about the new rating schema. And I will pick up and share my screen. The new rating schema or rating column is a new field type that we have available in Teambridge that allows you to quickly visualize feedback on users, on locations, from shifts. This is an extremely highly requested feature that's come in. If you've used Uber, if you've gotten delivery food delivered, if you have bought a cup of coffee and they've turned the iPad around, you have used a feature very similar to this, where you're selecting stars or you're selecting smileys to quickly provide feedback on your experience. So we want to bring that into Teambridge for really highly requested use cases like how do facilities rate users at the end of shifts? How do users provide feedback on locations or on facilities about their experience? And then how do we start to rank and use and synthesize some of that data that we're collecting to provide a better experience for our employees, to make sure that folks are getting coached when they need to be coached, and also, share feedback with the locations and see how we provide overall a better experience for our customers as well. We do have a new knowledge base article. That's what I'm showing here. So I'll make sure that this gets added to the chat so you all have access to it. This covers at a very high level everything that we'll run through today as far as how to create the rating column, where to create it, how to use it, and includes even a quick video so that if at any point you need to reference this, you can always come back here. We will also be sharing the recording from this webinar so that we have it referenceable going forward. So great, let's dive in. I'm going to switch over to a demo account where we can show you what the rating schema looks like, how to use it, and then some common automations and use cases that we're seeing for how to use this data downstream. The most common use case we've seen requested for the rating schema is how do we incorporate it into shifts? So we mentioned it earlier. How do we allow users to provide feedback on locations and locations to provide feedback on users? So that's what we're going to run through today. You can see I'm looking at my shifts table. And the first thing that I would need to do to start using the rating schema is create a new column. So you can create a new column in a few different ways. Directly from the list view by clicking the plus button, and you'll get the create a column modal window. You can do it from columns up here where you're picking what's visible and what's accessible by clicking add column. Or from any form view, scrolling to the bottom, if you click configure data, you'll have access to add a column. In this case, we'll do it from the list view. So if I click this plus button, I get the option to create a column. In this case, let's call it user rating. And then I can see the type is available to me here. If I click this, I have different field options available. We're going to go for rating. If we click rating, a few new options become available to us. What do we want this rating to look like? So what's the icon? Is it a star? Is it a heart? Is it a thumbs up? Is it a flag? Is it a dot? Pick the one that's going to be most relevant for your users for what they're providing feedback on. In this case, we'll go with a star. You can also change the color if you'd like, and you can see the preview at the bottom changes when I make these selections. And you can change the maximum value. So if you want to go all the way up to 10, so that users are providing more granular feedback, or 3 for just very quick feedback, you can. Most commonly, though, we've seen 5. So if you select 5, When I click create column, I will create a new rating column on the shifts table with these parameters. I went ahead and created this before, and so I'm just going to add this column to my view. So in this case, we see we have a user rating column. There are options of 5 stars, and users can now interact with this. We can change ratings on users from 3 to 4 as an example. And we can start to collect this data over time from different folks about our users. We can do the same thing for locations by just creating a new column. I went ahead and did this ahead of time as well. So I'm just going to add that column to my list view. And I can see here, I now have a user rating column and a location rating column. To actually use these and like what this would look like in practice, we can extend different access to each of these fields by managing our access permissions on the field level. So to do that, you can click into any form and click the hamburger icon where you can see details about the field, but also who can see this data. So in this case, for the user rating, the employee actually doesn't have access to this. This is feedback on them. We don't necessarily want to surface it to them until we're ready, we have all the information. So they have no access to this field. Whereas maybe if we've created access for facility users to log in and take action within Teambridge, they can add from blank. And so if a rating hasn't been provided for a user, they are able to select one. Similar for the location. In this case, it's just the opposite. We want employees or users to provide feedback on these locations, but the facility users to not be able to see this, again, until we're ready to have that conversation, positive or negative, or positive or constructive, I guess, for that location. Another really common area that you'll probably use once you create these is required clockout fields. So to access required clockout fields, you can go to settings, which I just did from clicking my user profile on the bottom left, then access groups. In this case, let's take a look at the employee. If I click edit my group settings and then go over to my mobile settings, and so this is what users are seeing from their mobile device, I can set required clockout fields. And so this is saying, employees, as you're clocking out of your shifts, please provide a rating on the location. Again, using that 1 through 5 scale that we just created on the shift. I could do something similar for locations, but in this case, I've just left it up to the user to provide a feedback on the location. Jumping back to my shift list view, we can now see, what we're looking at is basically last week's shifts for 3 users, and then this week's shifts for 3 users. And so you can see users and locations have been providing feedback in these shifts of, where they're ranking the employee and where the employee is ranking the location. As new users come in, they might select, 4 stars or 3 stars, and we'll continue to collect more information using this schema going forward. To take a look at a specific user, let's flip over to Amber. So I've filtered my list view to just one assignee, and I can see the user rating for this individual across all of her shifts. I can also see where she's ranked each of the locations that she's worked at. Now, this is awesome for just aggregating information, but it's not usable at this point. So how do we make it usable? And the way we're going to do that is by leveraging another field type of ours called a roll-up. And so I created this user rating view, which is just a new view of my users table. And let's create a roll-up field so that I can actually synthesize that information and figure out, all right, she has, dozens of ratings across all her shifts. What's the average? To do that, I create another column. In this case, we could call it, user rating. I then select the field type of roll-up. And what roll-up allows me to do is query across a specific table for specific records based on the parameters that I enter within this filter. And then either return me a count, return me a progress tracker, which some of you have seen is kind of the loading bar, return me a sum, or return me an average. In this case, we're going to select the average, right? We want the average of all the ratings for a given user across the shifts. So we're going to average that user rating. And this is going to provide us a roll-up, that averages across all those shifts what that user's been rated by the locations. So again, I went ahead and created this one ahead of time. I'm just going to add this to our list view. And I can see out of 5 stars, Andrew ranks 4.25. Amber ranks 4. Monica ranks 3.3. And so this is quickly distilling all the information we've collected within that field on the shift from the locations. And this might be many different locations about that user. And this starts to become really actionable. So we can start to use this information to apply tiers to our users, to put them into different buckets, maybe so they have a different pay rate or a different bill rate, to make sure that they're getting the right training and support and engagement they're needing or they need, depending on what their rating is. How I've done it here, and there's a few different ways to do it, but I want to take this information and make tiers so I can understand how do these break out, and then make that really actionable using automations. So I went ahead and added a user tier column, and you can see this is just a single select column, and I just have gold, silver, and bronze added to it. It is not a smart field. It's just a regular field, but I'm populating it using automations as these ratings are being updated. Now what that looks like, if I jump over to automations, again, by clicking my user profile in the bottom left and selecting automations, I can see that, to take a look at this example at least, when a location rating is updated and that rating is greater than 4, set that location tier to gold. So as we are getting new inputs about these users, we are re-triggering that roll-up field to rerun an average. And then based on the average returned, we're setting a tier for our employees, or for our locations to say, is this user gold? Are they silver? Are they bronze? You could also do this with a smart field by just adding a column. And if you have access to smart fields, enabling this and writing a prompt, saying, if the user rating field is greater than 4, return gold. Make sure to add the context field so that the smart field knows what it's referencing. And then make sure to add a title so that this column can actually be created. This would be another option to get this same tiering. It really just depends on how custom you want it, and how you want to be able to see this information generated. Now, once we have tiers, and I've gone ahead and done the same thing for locations, so I can see my locations are rating, San Francisco is a 5 out of 5. It's a gold tier. Eugene is 4.7 out of 5, so it's a gold tier. And it's sort of descending. You can then use this information to run automations. So we have 2 use cases that we want to showcase. The first one is notifying an admin about a low user rating, right? We want to make sure when locations are providing feedback on our users, if they're below a certain threshold, we need to have a conversation with that individual. We need to make sure they're getting the right training. We need to make sure they're getting the right support, because we want to hold, a standard for the service that we provide to make sure that our customers want our individuals to continue returning to that location. So in this case, I have an automation to notify an admin about a low user rating. So when a user rating is updated and that user rating is less than 3, we're going to send an email. The subject of that email is low user rating. We're sending it to a specific group of users, and we're filtering that group of users down to only those individuals that have a admin role on their profile. And in this case, this message says, hello, and this is the assignee that received the low rating. This user rating variable will actually return what their score was. So if it was a 1, if it was a 2, if it's anywhere below our threshold, it'll list that here specifically. User rating after their recent shift at this location. Please contact the facility for more details. Please reach out to that individual for coaching. Whatever actions need to be happen we can prompt those administrators, those coaches, whoever, HR, whoever needs to be reminded. We can prompt them to take action based on the rating that was entered. This is first and most common. Second, and this is really using the tier that we created. We want to be able to reward folks when they have achieved a high average, when they meet that gold tier, or maybe in that silver tier. And so in this case, we're using that tier field to automatically approve shift requests when users claim them. So this is user claims a shift, that tier is gold. Let's go ahead and automatically approve that. Don't make them wait to go through the request process. This user has demonstrated that they're valuable. Facilities like working with them. Let's reward them by automatically approving that request, allowing them to pick up more shifts, ultimately allowing them to earn more. And that's really how this rating schema all comes together with a couple different use cases. And again, the goal is let's capture as much feedback as possible in the most user-friendly way. Let's synthesize that information so that it makes it actionable. And then let's use that information to train our users or work with our facilities or reward locations or reward employees based on their new tier, their new rating, their new score. So that's the demo that we have for you today. I'm going to pause for a minute. I'm going to flip open Q&A, and any questions that haven't been answered, we'll go ahead and get answered.
All right. Well, we don't have any new messages that are coming in right now, but there are two questions that were asked during the course of the meeting so far. Both good questions. Can I generate a report to see the ratings for each individual user is the first one. Yes, currently you can export any of the rating columns data. While you are not able to currently export as a visual icon like a star or a circle, you will still receive the numerical value of that rating in the export. So an example would be, 3 out of 5 stars is going to display as 3 out of 5 in that export. And then does the user rating column need to be created under the employee profile as well as the shift? Yes, you do want to have that in both locations if you want that rating accessible on the shifts as well. And we'll keep it open for Q&A as well and come back if there's new ones. Actually, we have one live right now. Can the ratings be for how many cancellations as well? For attendance? Will, do you want to see if there's a kind of way that you might be able to work that in?
Yeah, absolutely. Ratings wouldn't apply as much here, but certainly roll up would. So if we have if we're looking back here and trying to understand, hey, how many cancellations does this individual have over a given time period? We can create a roll-up field that is going across all the shifts. Maybe it's counting those shifts where this is the assignee. And I don't think I have the field in here today, and the status is canceled. And this roll-up field would then allow us to return, hey, over the last year or over the last month, where shifts that were assigned to this individual and status of canceled, how many did we have? This will do that count or do that sum across that table to return us that value. So you can quickly see Andrew had 9 canceled shifts in the last month, whereas Monica had 1, as an example. Yeah, great question. You can filter to show shifts with no question or with no rating. You can see I've done it here actually on users. So in this case, really what I'm looking for is less, these don't have a rating, and more their rating is 0. And so user rating does not equal 0 is going to return me only the records where the user rating is populated, essentially. Just saw another question come in. Are there more features that Teambridge will be rolling out, like focusing on scheduling in the future? There are. We do releases every Wednesday at this point, and you'll see those appear when you go to your home screen in the bottom left, usually there's a message from Tito or Arjun, one of our founders, which will outline all the information captured within that release. Alternatively, anytime you are on our knowledge base, you can reference release notes. So in this case, we're looking at the November 2024 notes, where I just want to move this out of the way. We can see we released the rating column, some more access permissions around scheduling analysis, the ability to reject ship requests, the ability to create multiple records for task completion, and a handful of other features. We're regularly updating these release notes and posting all these there. So if at any point you need to reference them, you can just head over to the knowledge base and take another look if you've clicked off the pop-up within your dashboard. Looks like we got a couple more questions coming in. Would love to hear more about reports. We can share some more information after this. At this point, you can always export any list view by clicking the dots in the top right and then selecting export. We'll also make sure that these are incorporated into reports so we can start to trend over time using some of the graphs and some of the charts that you all are familiar with. It looks like there's another question based on providing rating notes while submitting a rating. Very similar to how users are providing feedback today. And a great question. If I'm on shifts, right now we only have the rating field. And this is going to be our quantitative feedback, right? Is it a 1? Is it a 2? Is it a 3, a 4, or 5? To provide qualitative feedback, you can always configure data, add a column. Maybe this is, user notes on the location. We could create this as a text field, and then we could add this to our required clockout fields for the user so that as they are submitting a rating, they are adding notes here. Alternatively, if we wanted to make it a little more dynamic, we could create this field and then write an automation where if a user rating is below a certain threshold, then we prompt them with a task to provide more information. We say, hey, we saw that you rated this location a 2. Share a little bit more about your experience. That is all able to be automated and facilitated through the mobile app. So it's as user-friendly as possible for these folks to provide, the actionable feedback that you need to have conversations with your customers. Sounds like how are we making it required when the user is on the other side of the screen? I'm not sure I'm fully following, at least for the location rating. In this example that we've staged today, we have added these as required fields on clockout for the employee. And I showed this a little earlier, but punching back into the mobile settings, we can make these fields required for the user to provide feedback. Also in this example, we have a facility user access group so that, your clients, your facilities are actually in Teambridge. We can prompt them with a task, or we can have them go directly into shifts for that week and actually populate information back about those end users. So that's the one I've staged here. If you have something a little more specific, you want to see something, tailored to your account, I'd recommend reaching out to your implementation manager or your customer success manager. Looks like I muted myself, but I don't see any new questions. Looks like we've answered everything. We'll make sure to send out a recording of this so that we have it referenceable for the future. Again, if at any point you have questions on what's been released recently, you can always head to our help article, which will directly link to new articles for features like the rating column that we discussed today. As well, this is the first of many feature spotlights that we'll be doing, so make sure to tune in December for our next one, which we will share out more details about here soon. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate y'all. We'll be sending out feedback, so please let us know how we did here, what else you want to see, and what we can incorporate for future spotlights. Thank you.